Hello everyone, welcome. Let me say hello to everyone all around the world already joining. Hello to everyone who's in the room. Tim, if you want to wave hi just to make sure you hear us. Okay, you hear us well. Wonderful. So I'm gonna share the presentation and let's get things started. There we go. And normally the presentation is on. Wow. I don't even need to ask for the confirmation. I see it on the screen. So welcome everyone to the second edition of the Participatory AI Research and Practice Symposium. I'm very excited, a little bit moved, honestly, to kick things open. It's been quite a long journey since the last pairs. The program committee has done a terrific work. We've received so many qualitative submissions, so I'm extremely excited to get things started. Let me start by giving you a quick overview of the today's planning, of today's agenda. It's going to be a long day. We actually contemplated having a 24 hours long conference to make sure everybody from every kind of time zone would be able to connect at some point. And then we realized that we're all volunteers and that sometimes we need to sleep, so we stick to only having a conference for 10 hours, which is already more than enough. So we're going to have an opening plenary with two very exciting presentations lined up, and then we will split into two parallel tracks. There will be two Zoom rooms, Zoom Room A and Zoom Room B, with parallel sessions. So first round of presentations happening in 45 minutes. Then we'll have another session of panels and presentations. On Room A, on Room B, we'll have a panel entirely dedicated to participatory practices of AI in Africa. And then we'll have, once again, more presentation on Zoom Room A, more workshops and discussions. And in Room B, we'll host the UNESCO Academic and CSO Network on AI Ethics and Policy. We'll take our first break for posters. We'll organize the main Zoom room will be split into breakouts, and everybody will be able to jump from one room to the other to see the posters, meet the posters authors and discuss with them. We'll resume the plenary and then move. Once again, we'll have a short break for midday, and then we'll move to the afternoon stretch of more presentation in Room A and B. Once again, poster breakouts, again parallel sessions, and the closing plenary. So normally it's still very, very early for the Americas right now, but you will have the opportunity to listen from speakers from all corners of the world. A few words about PAIRS just before jumping into the presentation. So PAIRS is a very, very new conference. It was organized as a one-time event back last year on the sidelines of the AI Action Summit. It was such a success with more than 250 people attendance on site and online that we decided that we could not make this into a bigger thing. On top of that, conversations were so meaningful, so exciting. So we stick together and turned PAIRS into an active and lively community of practice, organizing regular events. First, there was PAIRS X Africa, our first side event, this time on the inaugural, ahead of the inaugural of the Global AI Summit of Africa. And then PAIRS 26 on the side of the AI Impact Summit in New Delhi. The conference will continue tomorrow in person at the India International Center in the Kamala Devi complex. All of the presentations, panel, workshops of the previous events were recorded and can be accessed on our website. It will be the same for this year. Everything is recorded. You don't need to turn on your AI note taker. We will make sure that all of those conversations remain accessible after the event. And why pairs? We organized pairs because we felt like there was really a need for a space really dedicated to research and practice. To research and practice that are centered on participatory approaches to AI development, to AI governance, and this is also our particular part, to politics and resistance, or at least the civil society organization to rebalance power relationships when it comes to AI. This is all organized by a group of volunteers. All of us are volunteers. Feel free to join our Discord channels to either become a volunteer and organize your own pairs event, or join the organization team, or just if you want to engage with this community of practice, with all of the other speakers and experts and activists that you will hear from today and tomorrow. We are setting this up as an ongoing community that will have, on top of the events, other forms of activity engagement. And last but not least, I must thank our sponsors, AI Collaborative, that contributed some funding, which helped us pay for the travel expenditures of some of the speakers that will be in person tomorrow, with a specific focus on experts, activists, researchers from the Global South that could not have traveled otherwise. We are supported by a group of institutions such as the APT Institute, Connected by Data, the University of Sheffield, the European Centre for Non-Profit Law, the ESRC, Digital Good Network, ISWE, Data and Society, NIOL, Open Knowledge Foundation, Ada Lovelace Institute, and the Data Tank. And I've practiced a little bit, so I'm gonna try to thank all of the active volunteers who contributed to the program committee, starting with Amin Johar from CABI, Angel Kandé from NIOL, Anna Colum from the Data Tank, Bobina Zulfa from Policy, Eleanor O'Keefe from Ada Lovelace Institute, Emily Tseng from University of Washington, Fabio Strabel from ITS Rio, Jalak Kakar from the Center for Communication Governance at the National Law University of Delhi, Kito Shilongo from Mozilla Foundation, Lisa Gutermuth from Mozilla Foundation, Mardia Siba from The Independent, Mardia Siba, who is independent, but as far as I know, not from The Independent, Marlena Wisniak from the European Centre for Non-Profits, Not-for-Profit Law, Meg Young from Data and Society, Bila Sandub from Open Future, Ned Cooper from Cornell University, Nupura Gaude from Civic Data Lab, Octavia Field-Reeds from Ada Lovelace Institute, Paz Peña from Mozilla Foundation, myself, Rajesh Veraragavan from Georgetown University, Ramya Chandrasekhar from the Center for Internet and Society at CNRS, Renata Avila from Open Knowledge Foundation, René Sibert, who will join us later from McGill University, Seta Pena Gangadharan from London School of Economics, Sergio Branco from ITS Rio, Susanna Hansen from GW University, Susan Oman from University of Sheffield, Tim Davis from Connected by Data, Vinay Narayan from APT Institute, and Yusra Kelly from NIA. Now, without further ado, thank you for all the volunteers. Thank you for everybody who's in New Delhi, whose name might not appear here and who have contributed. And now, just a quick reminder before jumping into the presentation, you can find the agendas, abstract, and links on the PES website. Everything is recorded, this I've already said. You can share your notes, you can share your thoughts either in the chat, but if you want them to stay, if you want to start a conversation that will carry on, please head to our Discord. There will be spaces for this. And finally, we have our code of conduct. but I'm sure it's gonna be all right. So as a quick reminder, please be mindful. We try to respect everybody's speaking time. We try to give equal representation to everyone, so don't hog the mic as I'm doing right now. And yes, just be civil and cordial and everything will be fine. I think Tim wanted to say a few words before I give the floor to the first presenters. Is that correct, Tim, from New Delhi? He said, I said everything. Okay, you were impressed by my rapping abilities of saying names with butchering only half of them. So, without further ado, let's start with our plenary presentation. And I'm very, very excited to invite first Maria Luce Lupetti from Politecnico di Torino, who will make a presentation titled Participatory AI Design and Justice. So Maria Luce will present a work co-authored with her colleague Alessandro Iannello, also from Politecnico di Torino, with Cristina Zaga and Nazil Silla from TU Delft. And this will be dedicated to PALJ, the Participatory Design Justice for Ethical AI Transitions. Please, Maria.
Yes. Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. Also to be in the opening plenary. It's fantastic. Thank you so much. What I wanted to add is that this work is developed with Cristina, Nazli, and Alessandro, but also with a larger group of researchers, amazing researchers that I could not list all. Probably same as you all here, I am working on participatory AI under the belief that these practices can help us reflect the values, preferences, and needs of users and other impacted stakeholders, and more broadly, in general, help us shape better AI systems. We come from a place of design. We are design researchers with expertise in participatory practices working in technical universities on robotics and AI. We have been doing this for years. So we are quite excited because we feel like we have quite some expertise to share. It's a good moment for us, but at the same time, we are quite worried about, again, seeing participatory work being adopted and embraced in a rather superficial way. And we are worried it remains very often a superficial performative practice. In fact, from participatory design literature and traditions, we know these practices are themselves subject to inclusivity issues and power struggles, because alternative ways of knowing, often based on lived experiences, are regularly devalued in face of scientific knowledge. The radical issues that marginalized communities experience remain unattended, that we end up always involving people that are easy to involve, and design decisions are often already taken. To this, AI adds other layers of complexity, but at the same time, we know this is a critique that has been happening. It's an ongoing conversation inside and outside of academia, and we wanted to see how the people who are committed to social justice are trying to address this. So we did a scoping review of HCI work doing participatory AI research, engaged explicitly with social justice issues and perspectives. We are going to present this work in detail at CAI. We have a paper, but I'll give you a brief overview. So what we did is to actually gather these papers on participatory AI and social justice, and we reviewed them through the lens of design justice, because we believe design justice has been doing very relevant work for us for many years on community engagement, participatory design, and bridging this with social justice theories. So we think this is a great framework to actually critically scrutinize what we are doing. And we kind of summarize these principles from design justice into areas of things we could look for, such as the why we do this work, who is involved, what is the object of design in these kind of practices, how the participation unfolds, and when in the AI life cycle. With no surprise, of course, these practices are usually engaged in HCI to help building better AI systems by leveraging community engagement. But with this commitment to social justice usually comes also a commitment, an ambition to try to challenge power structures. And what is really interesting for us is the identity of who involves, that very often is blurred between the one of researchers and the one of participants, because very often people draw on personal experiences, personal motivations, and belonging to specific communities that are affected by AI. But at the same time, what is tricky is that despite this very hybrid identity, there is limited reflection on identity, background, positions, and intentions of the researchers. We very rarely find positionality statements really reflecting on these things. And concerning who is involved instead, we know from literature and theories that community-led organizations are essential, can play a crucial role in enabling the creation of truly just processes where power is negotiated and redistributed. And yet this happens very rarely, even in studies that specifically try to achieve social justice. Participation very often involves people as informants and evaluators, and rarely as partners, unfortunately. When it comes to, again, the how participation unfolds, we find that we make use of a vast array of design materials. Really, there is a lot of design work being done, but what is nice is that this design work is never the outcome, is never the final intention, not even the AI artifacts themselves. We develop a lot of things, we craft a lot of things that function as boundary objects, so that we can actually create design or foster the creation of new knowledge and social change, which is our ultimate goal. And when it comes to the when all this happens, we unfortunately see these works being performed only at the early stages of the AI life cycle. So there is much to do in this space. But based on this work we did, we kind of found two interesting areas to reflect upon. One that is our own identity, and one is the practice of crafting that is really central to design traditions. When it comes to our own identity, we see that very often this work comes from, again, these people belonging to a community, being affected by a certain problem, having experienced the effects of AI. And so participatory AI research becomes a form of activism. This is, on one hand, is beautiful, but at the same time, it's also really tricky, because this hybrid identity, it's something that we can't prescribe. It's impossible to prescribe, and it's also extremely hard to maintain. In fact, giving continuity to this kind of works after funding's end, especially in academia, it's really hard. It's really hard to assess the impact of these kind of practices. And if we are academics, this is a big problem. And also, and really very importantly, we need to be aware that participatory AI work very often imposes a very heavy toll on individuals in terms of time and emotional labor. So we feel like it's really, really, really important to us what happens when participatory AI engagement with community ends, when funding ends, and how can we avoid performative and extractivist engagements. And based on literature and also our own experiences, we believe that we should lose our research individuality and academic ambitions to some extent, when possible, in favor of building large alliances with diverse actors and ways of working. And this is also why I believe this event is amazing, because it's a demonstration that this can be done, and it's an opportunity also to do that. On the other side, on the role of craft, this is really touching me personally, because I studied design. I approached the field of design because of a love for craft. But then over the years, I saw this dimension of my work being always increasingly less relevant. We design less things, we make less things. We feel like that part of our identity is becoming less relevant. But at the same time, in this kind of work, I believe design things are really important, but not because they solve any kind of problem, but because these things become dialogical tools. They can help us challenge the AI epistemological apartheid and the mirage of objectivity and scientism that AI comes with. So through things, we can actually allow different ways of knowing and expressing to be valued. And very often, this is really difficult to do. In fact, a lot of the works we reviewed developed things, demonstrators that were intended for one thing, but then didn't work in that sense. But the communities, the alliances actually appropriated these works and did completely different things and used them to amplify their voices around certain issues and topics. So we need to be mindful and rethink our own craft practices to see how we can craft boundary objects as intertwined with modes of engagement. And these are the major considerations that I'm trying to work on in my own research project that is called Participatory Design Justice for Ethical AI Transitions, in short, PARJAI. And this is a project that is funded by the Italian Ministry of Education and Research and will last 3 years. And the general ambition is to try to uncover the key factors contributing to participatory design issues of social justice around AI innovation. I'm really glad and lucky to be working with 6 PhD students that are unpacking how justice issues manifest around AI in healthcare, AI in work, and AI in energy transition. And they also focus on different methodological spaces, the one on modes of engagement and AI boundary objects. But really, this is group work. And we also work with an assistant professor that tries to unpack the transdisciplinary challenges of doing this kind of research, and a postdoctoral researcher trying to translate all this body of knowledge into AI literacy programs. We are also building our own alliance. This is really in the making. The project started in September. We have the core team that I explained before, and they are in the audience also. We have an amazing advisory board of international faculty, associated faculty also from Politecnico di Torino, but we also regularly work with the same professionals. We are building a network of sister initiatives, such as the JEDI network in the Netherlands, and grassroots initiatives in our region and beyond. And we started to try engaging with these methodological spaces we mentioned before, especially in the space of AI boundary objects, not really much on using AI boundary objects as something that can ease innovation processes, but more as things that can open a space for agonism to flourish. And we did a pilot in China at Tongji University. And we are also trying to explore alternative ways of communicating and giving voice that is not necessarily in academic papers, such as a documentary called AI Counterpublics, where we engaged with a poet, a writer, a family from the suburbs, a tattoo artist, and a cartoonist. And we will tell a story of how everyday people are actually experiencing this change. So really, these are for us ways to ask ourselves who should have a voice and how should have a voice around AI and AI innovation processes. And we will further unpack a lot of other questions around participatory AI and social justice, such as the challenges and the differences between academia and industry, and what is at stake for us as researchers, and much more. And we will do this in a panel again at CHI this year, where I will join Cristina Arrington, Massimo Minichinelli, Cristina Zaga, Laura Forlano, Alessandro Boson, and Vera Liao. So if you're joining CHI by any chance, just reach out. So thank you so much.
Wonderful. Great timing. And thank you very much. If you have questions for Maria, either keep them for the written chat or the Discord. We're going to jump to the next presentation and have a quick Q&A at the end of the session. So you can ask, you can unmute, and you will be able to unmute and ask your questions directly. Next up, we have a presentation by Ye Hakim and Oscar Leung, who are from UCL and HKU, on the Community in the Loop AI governance framework, which they did with Andrew Lowe and Min So Chung from UCL, which is a model that was piloted actually in rural India for a set of flood prediction models co-designed with local communities of farmers. Yeah, I see that you've already unmuted and the presentation is on. The floor is yours.
Yes, amazing. Thank you so much. Oscar, do you want to get started? Oscar, I think you're on mute.
I'll try to unmute Oscar.
Okay, let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. I will start then. That's all right. Good morning. My name is Oscar Leung, and my co-presenter is Yaha Kim. Together, we will introduce the Community in the Loop AI Governance Framework, or CITL, which examines how AI governance can move beyond individual oversight towards collective community-level participation, particularly in high-impact public contexts. So we would like to begin from what we describe as a government deficit. AI systems now are being deployed faster than governance mechanisms can adapt, leading to systematic bias, opacity, and erosion of trust. Existing approaches, including human-in-the-loop models, tend to prioritize individual accuracy and technical intervention. However, many contemporary AI systems shape outcomes at a collective scale, such as climate modeling, disaster prediction, or public resource allocation. In the Global South, these risks are further amplified by historical marginalization and infrastructural constraints. CITL responds to this mismatch by embedding collective oversight and negotiation throughout the AI lifecycle. So rather than relying solely on individual intervention at isolated stages. To ground this shift conceptually, we drew on social contract theory, so treating AI systems as institutional actors rather than as neutral technical tools. From this perspective, legitimacy becomes a central concern. We adopted a hybrid normative model, which allows us to access AI governance across three dimensions: procedural legitimacy, moral substantive alignment, and recognitional legitimacy, meaning that decisions must be intelligible and justifiable to those affected. Now, these principles are operationalized through algorithmic social contracts, which function as co-negotiated agreements that define ethical boundaries, accountability mechanisms, and acceptable forms of system behavior in context-specific ways. Rather than privileging a single philosophical tradition, we instead drew on contractarian theories comparatively. So in our study, Hobbes was used to inform the need for clear attribution of responsibility. Locke highlighted rights protection and appeals. Rousseau foregrounded public co-authorship of rules. Rawls was used to emphasize on justice defined by outcomes for the least advantaged, and Nozick raised safeguards around consent and coercive data extraction. Together, these benchmarks provided a structured way to evaluate the legitimacy of AI systems operating across institutional boundaries. So this framework builds on what has been described as the participatory turn in AI design. While participation itself is increasingly acknowledged in principle, most implementations remain consultative, relying on proxies rather than direct collaboration. CITL in this case argues that participation must be institutionally binding, what we describe as participation with teeth, rather than simply a symbolic engagement. In the Community in the Loop framework, CITL, the first pillar operationalizes participation through decision sieves. These mechanisms ensure that community input meaningfully influences technical decisions at each phase of the AI lifecycle, while maintaining continuity and auditability across phases. The emphasis here is not consultation, but binding influence on system design. The second pillar addresses data governance through community-based data stewardship. So here, rather than relying solely on individual consent, CITL adopts collective models such as data trusts and data cooperatives, enabling communities to negotiate how data is assessed, shared, and governed, particularly in contexts vulnerable to extractive data practices. Lastly, the third pillar focuses on public algorithmic auditing. Documentation tools such as dataset nutrition labels and clear framework make system properties legible beyond technical experts. Auditing is framed here not only as statistical evaluation, but as community-validated accountability in high-stakes systems. So together, these three pillars form the structural core of the Community in the Loop framework. My co-presenter, Yeha, will now discuss how this framework was applied empirically and what its practical implications reveal.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Oscar. Yes, so on the next page, yes. So to see CITL in practice, we took a look at a couple of different case studies before we started on the pilot, essentially. So we started to look at a few different case studies, including a case study in the Gayo Highlands in Indonesia, where indigenous communities there use symbolic naming, like the Mad River, as like a linguistic device and like warning system that prevented 20 major floods over 9 years. So we are really inspired by this. So what we wanted to do was that we wanted to integrate this with indigenous knowledge, with high-tech digital twin technology and sensor data to create a much more resilient and culturally relevant early warning system. Yep. So on the next page, thank you. Yes, so to validate the community in the loop framework, we conducted a 3-month intensive pilot study last year from July to September in the rural Maharashtra region of India. So this area was specifically chosen due to its high vulnerability to climate change and flood risks. We engaged with a group of local farmers in 5 participatory online workshops designed to move them from passive subjects of AI to active co-designers. Yes. So the journey really began with AI literacy sessions to bridge the knowledge gap. So this was followed by the negotiation of formal social contracts that set the rules for how their data would actually be used. So in the final sessions, we tried to work together to iterate on model designs, integrating the farmers' local seasonal knowledge, such as specific historical flood patterns with real-time sensor data. The results were quite compelling. By incorporating this indigenous and local knowledge, the model's predictive accuracy improved by around 10 to 15%, significantly reducing false positives in flood alerts. Beyond technical metrics, we saw a dramatic shift in community trust. So initially, only 5% of participants really felt that AI aligned with their needs, but by the end of the pilot, this rose to around 30 to 35%. So farmers really began to see themselves as co-owners of the data, using these social contracts to influence local policy. But as you can see on the slide, there were also a lot of critical barriers. So the pilot did highlight a lot of these issues that we didn't really foresee. So we faced significant logistical hurdles as rural digital infrastructure led to low bandwidth and high dropout rates. So only 15 participants on average were able to engage consistently. So furthermore, we encountered deep-seated skepticism and resistance from community members and leaders who rightfully, I would argue, feared these practices of data colonialism and extractive practices. So these challenges really underscore that for CITL to work, we have to address the AI literacy gap and ensure that participation is not just consultative, but something that is truly empowering. Yep. On the next slide. Yes. So looking at the policy landscape, so India's Samaj Sakar's Bazaar models, the synergy between society, state, and markets really provided us with an inspiration to provide a strong foundation to creating a participatory AI framework. So on the next slide. To scale CITL, so what we recommend is a mandatory community-in-the-loop assessment for public sector AI and investment in sovereign infrastructure like localized data commons. And on the next slide, we also suggest a few other strategies to scale CITL. So this really breaks the dependency on global north models and designs for context-aware resilience in data-scarce settings. So in conclusion, our goal is to rehumanize policy, moving from short-term fixes to sustainable human-centered development. So by institutionalizing community participation, we can really bridge this gap between abstract ethics and lived realities in these communities. So our vision is AI as a tool for people, planet, and progress. Thank you so much.
Wow, wonderful. Super interesting. So thank you very much. Yes, just make it clap in the chat, please. We already have a written question, so I'm going to read it aloud. I think it actually applies to both of you. And then if you would like to ask a question directly to one of the two or both of the all of the speakers, please feel free to raise your hand. So the first question, which was asked by Nikki Wilson, is how do you process designers decide how much AI literacy support is required upfront in order to engage with those meaningful participatory approaches that go beyond tokenism.
Yes. So I think just as a general note, so what we didn't really expect is, so we did come in with the expectation that a lot of these farmers wouldn't be familiar with programming languages like Python as an example. So for us, we try to really tackle the fundamentals, but essentially I think it's better to overestimate as opposed to underestimate, which we did essentially. So when we tried to go from, so we only hosted 5 participatory workshops. So going from, doing very simple in Python, giving them the fundamentals of Python all the way up to, trying to use geospatial libraries like GeoPandas, it was a big hurdle. And there was only so many participants who were really interested in actually engaging with these sessions. So hence, the online sessions weren't as engaging as we expected. So I think it's really a case-by-case thing, where you have to actually engage with the participants regularly to really determine where this AI literacy gap is. Because some people, some of the farmers actually knew a little bit about AI. Some of their equipment, like IoT devices, will gather information. So they are somewhat aware of this. But I think this is a case-by-case thing.
Luce?
Yeah, in our case, we are not really necessarily working yet on AI literacy program as part of participatory research. When we draft participatory research plans, the kind of knowledge you want to transfer about the AI system, it really, again, depends on what you're trying to develop. And sometimes it's not really the technical issues at stake. It's also the social, relational, environmental, organizational problems that are around this innovation that we want people to be aware of. So, and this is something we try to also address when we focus on the AI boundary objects. What is that we are trying to communicate, and what do we want people to be literate about? Is it necessarily the technical capabilities? In my work, very rarely is about that. It's much more on the socio-technical conditions and implications that it comes. So how much literacy support, it depends, but also not necessarily so much. And very often what we find is that what is interesting is also to learn about people's feelings about certain things, even when there is no literacy. So really the felt experience of these things.
Very interesting. And so the second question, I think it's going to be the last one. Genvi, I see that you've activated your camera. Would you like to ask, probably stick to the first question, because I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer both, but would you like to ask them yourself, or should I read them aloud? I see you saying no with your head, so I probably will read them aloud. Okay. So Genvi just asked, in participatory AI processes, how can you ensure that community inputs genuinely influence design decisions rather than being absorbed as symbolic consultation? Did you set up specific methodologies to record, categorize those inputs, make sure keep track of them, and have some sense of accountability for how were they taken into account by the design team?
Yes, so maybe I can expand upon that on our side, actually. So for us, what we try to do is that we try to establish binding social contracts and clear accountability mechanisms. So initially, when we approached the farmers, obviously there was a bit of a linguistic barrier, and then there was also the challenge of us making the GitHub repository available for them as an example, to ensure that we weren't messing around with their data. We also asked, if recording these sessions were allowed as well. A lot of the participants felt quite uncomfortable with that. So obviously there was a lot of negotiating before we actually took on this pilot case study. And I think what's quite important is that to integrate participation iteratively across the entire AI lifecycle, we need to involve the stakeholders from the very beginning at the problem definition level, and even deciding if AI is very appropriate. So this is actually a conversation that my colleagues, including Oscar, Andrew, and Mark, we continuously had, just saying like, look, is AI flood prediction models something that farmers actually need? And then after conducting, like interviews, also looking into, if, the farmers were at high risk of these floods and being impacted, after we looked into that, and then after we interviewed all the participants, we actually reached a core decision. Yes, I think AI systems are actually relevant to this area. And I think, just on a side note as well, I think just in hindsight, I think fostering community-led data stewardship is really important. And I think, there needs to be a fundamental shift in towards bottom-up methods where communities actually negotiate terms and demand reparations for data exploitation and control access, thereby countering data colonialism.
Wonderful. And Maria Luce, if you have any closing word, that's also, I imagine, something that is included, that is within the scope of your research, right?
Yeah, again, we don't have concrete examples yet, but I think in our perspective, we are really trying to also bring up all the limits also of these approaches. And what I wanted to add, because everything that Yeha said is amazing, I wanted to add that sometimes we also need to flag where it's not possible to have accountability mechanisms, and where are the limits of participation, and to be aware that some decisions are beyond what we can do in a collaborative way. We have examples of people, community organizations that are trying, for instance, to build local AI with citizens. And of course, in the first stage, they will use commercial models, and they will rely on services for which you can't negotiate conditions. You just take what it feels like is the best option you can find. And so there are limits. But I think also just flagging those limits and the borders of what you can do is really important, so that you can direct where you can actually have a voice and an impact.